Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Elmers, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here tonight with my colleagues to discuss the importance of small business in America. Before I get started, I would like to ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and insert extraneous materials on the topic of this special order. Again, Mr. Speaker, we're here talking about small business.
Objection, so ordered.
Thank you. Small business are our job creators in America. And we here in Congress must do everything that we can to help them to be doing exactly that and creating jobs in our country. We're here to talk about these issues. We're here to talk about the burdens that are on small business that remain intact that we can help with. We must do everything we can because right now our small business hands are tied. They are telling us over and over again that regulations and the threat of taxation and uncertainty continue to hold them back from creating jobs, innovating, and investing in their own companies. With that, I would like to allow my colleague from Washington, Ms. Herrera-Butler, to speak.
Thank you. Not on? There we go. Thank you. I thank the gentlelady for allowing me the time to join her here today to talk about what this government can and should be doing to help the private sector grow jobs. Period. That's what we're about. We want to help small businesses grow jobs. You know, this is a statistic most of us are familiar with. Close to 2/3 of every new job, of all new jobs, come from small businesses. They are truly the backbone of our economy. So what if this government started by saying, what can we do to help you, not hurt you or impede your success? And that's what this Congress is going to be doing this week as we consider the Regulatory Flexibility Act, H.R. 527. It's a bill that strengthens existing law. It simply says if a federal rule is killing jobs, if a federal agency is then required to find a rule that's less burdensome. It's pretty cut and dry. It's something we should be doing already, but we actually have to pass a bill to require it. You know, when the federal agencies here in Washington, D.C. issue one rule after another, small businesses pay the price and our economy loses jobs. For instance, take Summerockus vacuum pumps in my neck of the woods in Southwest Washington, business manufacturer. You know, when I visit this business, I see a thriving facility with people at work. They're assembling products that help our economy grow. But Summerockus vacuum pumps don't have a huge team of lawyers and business accountants and to handle the regulatory details. They actually need regulatory specialists to navigate the maze of federal rules. They don't have the money, but you know, they just might need it. I actually brought the reason why I think they might need that. Mr. Speaker, this is pretty heavy. This is actually the list of federal rules and regulations just for half of November. This doesn't even represent the entire month. These books I have right here represent about 2 weeks worth of federal regulations and rules that Summerockus vacuum pumps has to navigate. Let me show you, if I may, just the rules from the last 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, right here. You know, part of the reason we're here today is to illustrate the need to make it simpler and easier for small businesses to navigate this federal maze. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is Monday, this is Tuesday, and this is Wednesday. 3 days worth of rules that Summerockus vacuum pumps in Southwest Washington is going to need help navigating. It shouldn't be this way, Mr. Speaker, which is why this week we're working very hard. We're going to pass a bill that says if these rules and burdens, it puts the proof and the burden back on the government. If these rules are too burdensome, the federal government needs to find a better way to put forward its regulations. You know, another rule that's really important, it's working its way through the Environmental Protection Agency and through the courts, it's called the Forest Roads Rule. It's also very impactful to Southwest Washington. It's crippling in that it overturns 35 years of environmental policy and would require a federal permit on every single forest road. In essence, you'd have to get the same federal permit for a road through your privately owned forest land that you would have to get for factories and industrial sites. That's not necessary. Let's consider the impacts on public land. According to the U.S. Forest Service, it would require that agency alone 10 years to obtain the 400,000 permits necessary for the roads on public lands. What would that do to Rick Dunning, who owns a small tree farm in Clark County, Washington? He's not the U.S. Forest Service. He doesn't have unlimited lawyers and resources. He has to do this on his own. That's what we're here tonight to do, is to make it easier on these small business owners to operate in our regions and grow our economy. So with that, I thank the gentlelady for the time to talk about my support for the Regulatory Flexibility Act, for what we're doing to help grow jobs and small businesses. I yield back.
Thank you, and I'll just echo my colleague's remarks by saying that according to the NFIB, compliance with the environmental regulations costs small businesses 4 times more than larger firms. Larger firms do have the ability and employees in place to deal with these issues. Our small businesses simply cannot afford to do business that way. And with that, I would like to allow my colleague from California to come forward, Mr. Denham.
Thank you for your leadership on this area. I rise in support of H.R. 527. We can't afford any more of the overregulation. Regulatory burdens from new rules just this year alone have cost American taxpayers $93.2 billion. And one study found that each $1 million increase in the federal regulatory budget costs 420 jobs. Overregulation costs us jobs around the nation. And let me just speak from my own perspective. 12 years ago, I started Denim Plastics, something that my wife and I borrowed an incredible amount of money to start a vision that we had supporting the agriculture industry with a plastics company. You know, it has been a tough road to hoe as a small business owner. It certainly comes at great risk to our family. But it was a vision that we had that we believe that without any government intervention, we can succeed in not only creating new customers, but new jobs. But one regulation would have put us out of business. The government-run healthcare, just the 1099 provision alone, by having to report all of our customers, by having to report all of our suppliers, would have put our small business under. From an agriculture perspective, I'm a farmer in the Central Valley, and you know, the EPA came down with new dust control regulations. Now we farm, we drive tractors, we till our land, and we're going to have dust. I mean, just by the sheer motion of a tractor driving through a field or a plow putting through the dirt, it's something we've done for the history of our nation, creates dust. But are you going to put us out of business because of it? When we grow almonds, you can't spray the trees full of water before you shake the trees and harvest the almonds. You're going to have dust. So I've been a co-author of a bill that gets rid of this burdensome regulation, something that would shut down our agriculture industry, not only in the Central Valley of California, but across the nation. We're farmers. We are going to have dust. Some of my fellow farmers and ranchers are also aware that the EPA also wanted to expand its regulation of manure as a threat of greenhouse gas. I mean, some of these things are so ludicrous that they just cost us millions of jobs, and the threat alone causes farmers to say, do we really want to be in this business? Do our kids really want to take over the family farm? We've got to stop this overregulation because it does cost us jobs. We've got to stop eliminating jobs before we can actually go out and create more jobs. We have to have certainty in the marketplace. And whether you're a farmer or a small business owner, the regulations affect us in such a way that as a small business owner, I couldn't go out there and hire a lobbyist to go through the 90,000 pages of new regulation this year alone. We have to stop the regulations that are killing businesses throughout the nation, and H.R. 527 is one way to do that. We need flexibility. Most of all, we need certainty. We've got to be able to plan our business not for a month, not for 2 months, not for 1 year. When you're putting your home into a second mortgage because you want to do the American dream and create a business want to go out and hire new people, you have to have some certainty. I can't go to my wife and say, let's take a second out on our home and maybe we might make it next year. Regulations, we don't know what's going to happen. We need to be able to plan for 5 years, 10 years. Need to be able to plan on putting our kids through college. Need to, before I go out and hire a new employee, I need to have a commitment not only to that employee that we're going to have ongoing employment, but I've got a commitment to that employee's entire family that depends on us for that new job. So the regulations that are killing our businesses across the nation have to end. We need flexibility. We need certainty as a business. We need it to create jobs in this great nation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you to my colleague. That is just your perspective alone as a small business owner and a farmer, really gives us that strong idea of what we're really facing. Many of us here in Washington now are and have been small business owners, and we understand the burdens that we are having to undertake and the rest of America is dealing with. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to just talk a little bit about some statistics and poll data. According to a recent Gallup poll, small business owners in the United States say complying with government regulations is the most important problem facing them today, followed by consumer confidence in the economy and lack of consumer demand. Small business firms bear a regulatory cost of $10,585 per employee just to deal with the regulations, which is 36% higher, there again, than larger businesses. For small business is what drives our economy, and yet it is what is continuously targeted, and we must act on it with the bill that we will pass tomorrow, H.R. 527. I spoke a little bit about the excessive costs of dealing with environmental regulations. According to the Small Business Administration, regulations cost the American economy $1.7 trillion annually. That is an enormous cost. And you can see by our unemployment rate why we continue in this. Until we are able to cut the excessive, overbearing regulations that are facing our businesses, we will not turn this economy around. That is why we must act now. That is why the many bills that we have passed over to the Senate, we repeatedly ask for a vote so that we can get started. We could do this tomorrow if these bills were voted on. One last bit of information before I introduce my next colleague. Of the administration's new regulations, 200 are expecting to cost over $100 million each. 7 of those new regulations will cost the economy more than $1 billion each. We cannot continue on this path. With that, I'd like to call on my colleague from Chicago, from Illinois, Mr. Schilling.
Thank you, Congresswoman Elmers, for the introduction and just for inviting me to participate today. The best thing about having the opportunity to represent the residents of Illinois 17th District is just listening to their concerns and taking those concerns back here to Washington, D.C. As I travel throughout the district, the area, I listen and I'm also asked, what worries me? I worry about unemployment and about the uncertainty facing our families in our district. I'm worried that more is not being done to create an environment of certainty that promotes long-term growth in our job sector. Government does not create jobs. We need to be clear about that. Government creates an environment for job creation by the private sector. Folks simply will not be put back to work if government continues villainizing our job creators and enacting policies that keep workers on the unemployment line and drive us deeper into debt. As a small business owner myself, I understand how this hinders the ability to create jobs. Back in August, I invited local business owners throughout our area to participate in a business roundtable where we discussed what government can do to empower the private sector, spur job creation, and grow our economy. These business owners are the people we are asking to lead us into economic recovery and to put Americans back to work. I was pleased to see folks from all sorts of industry present the eager and great ideas and thoughts on issues that basically are causing them to struggle in this economy. They shared with me that high energy costs, rising taxes, mixed messages from Washington, D.C., and the uncertainty from the Illinois state government are stifling the creation of the environment of economic success. Now, there are more than 27 million small businesses throughout the United States of America. They are the lifeblood of our nation's economy. America's small businesses create 7 out of every 10 new jobs and employ over half the country's private sector workforce. We ought to be making it easier for these folks to grow and hire new workers, not villainizing them or burdening them with more tax codes, unnecessary mandates, high energy costs, and uncertainty. We need to tear down the roadblocks, get government out of the way, and lay the groundwork for real private sector job creation. Phil Nelson, president of the Illinois Farm Bureau, recently testified before the Small Business Committee. To quote him, he said, "What really keeps me lying awake at night is the potential for more regulatory creep. It's as if we go to bed one night with one set of regulations and we wake up the next morning facing a new set. Every moment that we spend fighting and then working to comply with the needless duplicative services, regulations, it takes us away from what we do best, producing food." My colleagues and I in the House have been focused on jobs since day one, passing more than 20 jobs bills to give small businesses the certainty they need to grow, increase the domestic production of oil, and to get Americans back to work. Unfortunately, these bills remain stuck in the Senate, but we cannot do it alone. The President and the Senate Democrats must join us. This week we'll be voting on H.R. 527, the Regulatory Flexibility Improvement Act. This is yet another pro-jobs bill, one that helps address the problem of burdensome, reckless regulation that burden businesses and stunt job growth. The Regulatory Flexibility Improvement Act provides urgently needed help to small businesses facing an onslaught of federal regulations. When considering regulations, agencies frequently fail to consider alternative ways to achieve their regulatory goals without imposing unnecessary burdens on American jobs creators. This bill increases the ability of small businesses to provide input to federal agencies as they consider government regulations, and gives the Small Business Administration new authority to ensure agencies complying with the law that require flexibility in taking regulatory action against small business. It takes President Obama's regulatory review executive order one step further, giving the Small Business Administration the ability to ensure new regulations are in compliance with the law while verifying that small businesses will be able to comply without hurting their ability to create jobs. Business owners need the certainty that the government will get out of the way and so that they can do what they do best and grow their businesses and create jobs. And the American people need real bipartisan solutions to our jobs crisis. Let's put politics and partisanship aside and help the private sector create the jobs that Americans throughout the country so desperately need. The time has come to empower small businesses, to reduce government barriers by helping our small businesses, to fix the tax code to help our job creators, and to boost competitiveness for American manufacturers, encourage entrepreneurship and growth, maximize American energy production, pay down America's unsustainable debt burden, and start living within our means. With that, I yield back.
Thank you to my colleague for all of that very important information. And again, as a small business owner, this information is vital to the solutions that we are coming up with here in Washington. We're not just members of Congress who don't have the experience out there. We aren't listening to just the usual Washington bureaucrats. We are actually small business owners who deal with these real life experiences and understand what works and what doesn't, and this simply is not working. Mr. Speaker, in my district, where the unemployment rate hovers at about 10.3%, I am hearing numerous stories highlighting how small businesses are hanging on by a thread. And I say that in quotes. Hanging on by a thread is what I hear. Overregulation is killing us, is another quote I hear over and over and over again. They feel that they are being punished by Washington. They, years ago, felt that their competitors were the ones that they were working against and trying to compete with for a better product. Now they feel that they are working against the federal government, and the federal government is working against them. The federal government has become their enemy. One of the local small businesses in my district is Kivitz Incorporated in Clinton, North Carolina, owned and operated by Mr. Gerald and Telia Kivett. They are wonderful people, and I met them when I was actually running for office. Why? Because I needed to go in. They called for a meeting with me because they were so concerned with where our country was going and what was happening to their business. They were not people who had been politically active. They were not people who had ever sat down with a member of Congress or a want-to-be member of Congress, but they felt trapped and continue to feel trapped by the government regulations and all of the uncertainty, including the President's health care bill, which they know will harm them greatly. Kivitz Incorporated is the largest family-owned and operated church pew manufacturer and pew refinisher in the United States. In addition, they build and refurbish other church furniture and fixtures, such as steeples and stained glass windows, and provide a full range of services from delivery to installation. This is a jewel in my district. So many are sending these jobs over to China. And yet the Kivitz have maintained their business. Their business was started by Gerald's father, I believe back in the 50s. They have spent their lives and dedicated their lives to their business. And they are feeling that it is being pulled out from underneath them. Mr. Kivitz's company had 160 employees in 2005. And they are now down to 52. From 160 to 52. Their volume of business is down 60%. Their business has not made a profit in the last 3 years. That is significant. They have not increased the prices on their products either since 2005. This has been due to the fear of losing more business, even though their costs for products have escalated. But they have tried to maintain their business by keeping their prices at the same level. At one point, they were averaging one church furniture for one church every day, and are now down to approximately 2 per week. Mr. Speaker, how are they going to be able to keep their doors open and keep those 52 remaining employees working? Churches depend on charitable giving, and they are having a hard time finding a way to meet their operating budget, which leaves any kind of future planning completely out of the realm of possibility. I spoke a moment ago about the health care law. The uncertainty it's creating for small businesses. Owners make it harder for us to determine, and this is coming straight from Mr. Kivett. It is making it harder for us to determine what our costs are at a time when we are struggling to meet the most basic costs of running our business. As Mr. Kivett puts it, we are just trying to maintain and praying for the government to stop attempting to regulate small businesses and get out of the way. That is another quote I hear over and over and over again. Get out of the way. That's some of the gloom and doom that my business owners in my district are faced with. As you've heard tonight from some of my colleagues, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Mr. Schilling from Illinois showed you the card. The number of bills, again, that we have passed in the House with bipartisan support to create jobs. We keep hearing how America wants jobs. We keep hearing about the 99. The 99% is sitting on the floor of the majority leader in the Senate. Because if those bills were passed and sent to the president to be signed into law, we could have jobs created in this country. We need to decrease the unemployment rate. We can talk about cutting spending all day long, and we are all about that. But until we get people back to work, we're not going to turn this economy around. Again, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you've heard us speak tonight about H.R. 527, which we'll be voting on tomorrow. We simply cannot continue the one-size-fits-all regulations produced by this administration, which hinder our small businesses. This bill will help alleviate needless burdens. Economic recovery begins with our small businesses. But this will not happen unless we rein in the mass of regulations coming from right here in Washington. The Regulatory Flexibility Act of 1980, as amended by the Small Business Regulatory Enforcement Fairness Act, requires federal agencies to assess the economic impact of their regulations on small businesses. Imagine that. Imagine having to run an economic impact study to find out how much damage they will be doing to small businesses if these regulations are put in place. If the impact is significant, they must consider alternatives that are less burdensome. However, the agencies have used loopholes to get around this statute, and that is why it is so important that we pass H.R. 527, the Regulatory Flexibility Improvements Act of 2011, which would remove the loopholes and strengthen the Flexibility Act by increasing the power of the Office of the Chief Counsel for Advocacy to enforce the RFA, ensuring complete analysis of potential impacts on small businesses, and forcing agencies to perform better periodic review of rules. Regulations often impose unnecessary burdens on small businesses. You've heard that over and over and over again tonight, that impede their ability to create jobs. Agencies frequently fail to consider appropriate alternatives that allow agencies to achieve their regulatory objectives without imposing burdens on America's job creators, our small business owners. The Regulatory Flexibility Improvements Act, H.R. 527, provides urgent needed help to small businesses facing an onslaught of federal regulations. It has been 15 years since Congress last updated the Regulatory Flexibility Act of 1980. During that time, we have seen that there are weaknesses in the regulatory process that federal agencies have exploited at the detriment of small business and job creators. This bill ensures federal agencies can no longer ignore the RFA. Job creators are the key to economic recovery, and the small businesses are America's job creators. Overregulation requires the diversion of scarce capital from job creation to create regulatory compliance. I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, North Carolina's unemployment rate is now 10.4%. This is not a statistic. This is a catastrophe. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for this opportunity tonight, and I yield to my colleague.